Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Woodman, and I want to welcome you to my YouTube channel. In this video, we are going to talk about fascism and its role in spreading disinformation. This is important because fascism was part of the rise of a new form of government that relies on myth and lies during the 20th century. Essentially, this was the time we saw bad actors use their government to operate on exaggeration and false information to paint a certain political narrative. Let's begin with laying some foundation by talking about Max Weber. Weber was a German jurist, sociologist, philosopher, and political economist. According to Weber, three sources of authority inform different kinds of government. One, traditional. Monarchy is an example of authority that derives from tradition. For example, here are some statements a monarch could say. Quote, I was born to be king. My father was king before me. His father was king before him. I am the kingdom and the kingdom is me. Unquote. Quote, I read the complaints and declare him guilty. Throw him into a dungeon, or the dungeon, unquote. The monarchies are often structured with noblemen and aristocrats, each with their rank at the top, and workers or peasants at the bottom. Monarchies create stability by making the succession of power clear. 2. Rational, legal. Democracy, democratic republics, and constitutional monarchies are examples of authority derived from the rule of law. These are also called liberal democracies because they are, at least in theory, inclusive. For example, here is a statement a rational legal ruler could say. Quote, I humbly thank the voters of this great republic for electing me as your president. I shall swear to uphold the laws of the Constitution, unquote. Under a rational, legal, rule of law government, everyone, including the elected leader, is bound by the same laws. There is a free press and independent judiciary, which is when a judge makes an independent decision about how laws should be enforced. There is also an independent prosecutor who decides who to prosecute. The president has nothing to do with it. This keeps prosecutions from becoming politically motivated and limits the power of the president. 3. Charismatic leadership. Fascism is an example of authority that derives from charismatic leadership. A better term today might be a cult leader or a demagogue. A demagogue is a political leader who seeks support by appealing to the emotions, desires, and prejudices of ordinary people instead of using rational arguments. The fascist leader generally comes to power through legal means, either by winning an election or being appointed to power under rule of law procedures. Fascism, therefore, arises in a democracy. The fascist leader then subverts and destroys the institution of democracy to give the leader complete control. Because fascism arose in a democracy, it did not thrive in Europe until the dissolution of the empires after World War I, when new nations carved out the old empires, committed themselves to democratic forms of government. I bring these three forms of government authorities up because we need to understand which one has a high chance of having a potential fascist leader rise up. We now know that fascists mainly gain power if citizens in a country give them that power, either through elections or an appointment under rule of law procedures. We also know fascism has something to do with appealing to the emotions of the citizenry as well as a way to gain power. Let's look at an example of Benito Mussolini, who was an example of what Max Weber meant by a charismatic leader. When Mussolini rose to power, Italy was a constitutional monarchy. Deus from Latin dux means leader. The word fascism comes from the Italian fascita, which means bundle or group. When Mussolini's party formed, it was called the Fasci de Comunito, which means combat groups. Here is Mussolini's version of the events on October 30th, 1922. On October 30th, 1922, a fascist army marched into Rome to restore order and put Italy on the first step towards redeeming its lost glory. Mussolini said, quote, before I took control, Italy was in disarray. Inflation and unemployment were rampant. The weak and ineffectual socialists were running the country into the ground. Never before had the people of Italy so thirst for authority, direction, and order. For 2 days, the great fascist army sprung from the people marched and gathered strength. All of Italy was on the move. All of Italy was swept up in the thrill of the moment. The revolution was all around, unquote. The truth is, on October 29th, 1922, the Ilopo dell'Elate, the newspaper operated by Mussolini and his followers, published a sensational, untrue story. Mussolini said, quote, "I alone could restore order to Italy. I alone could return Italy to its glory, ancient Rome. We began to enact our destiny when I rode Rome on horseback at the end of a mighty army," unquote. The truth is, Mussolini received a royal summons as he entered a train. Mussolini said, quote, "On October 30th, 1922, after marching for 2 days and conquering all of central Italy, an army of people approached the palace. I entered and demanded that the ineffectual and weak King Victor Emmanuel III relinquish control to the men and women of Italy, to the people," unquote. The truth is, Mussolini begged the Majesty's forgiveness by saying he came from a battle that had no casualties. Mussolini was appointed prime minister and was permitted to put together a majority coalition. Mussolini thanked Victor. These are just the many statements Mussolini said that showed exaggeration and misleading narratives. After they gained control of the government, they wanted to rid Italy of corruption. They vowed to drain the swamp, and people chanted that phrase as well. Mussolini coined the phrase, "drain the swamp." All fascist movements purport to be anti-corruption movements. By corruption, they mean impure elements infiltrating and destroying the purity of the nation. This is important to keep in mind because it is part of a fascist attempt to appeal to people's emotions that the structures of society are not working for them and say corruption is the problem. Fascists know the people they are appealing to are struggling with their daily lives and will claim they will solve it on their own by getting rid of the corruption. However, fascists will intentionally leave out the part where they are trying to gain political power for their self-interest and delegitimize our institutions, which results in us being worse off than before. With this example of Mussolini in mind, let's go over the philosophy of fascism. Ivan Ilyin was a Russian philosopher who articulated the philosophy of fascism. He was a nobleman who fell displaced after World War I. From 1923 until 1935, Ivan Ilyin was a professor at the Russian Scientific Institution in Berlin, Germany. Here are some quotes from him that talk about fascism. Quote, "The world has grown corrupt and needs redemption. Fascism will redeem and purify the world. The entire nation should move and think as one. Evil begins where the person begins. The nation is like a body and the citizens are parts of the body. Each should remain in its place. The head stays at the top, the feet stays below," unquote. Quote, "This is why democracy does not work. In a democracy, the lower and middle classes are always striving for advancement. This creates chaos and disorder. The task of the government is to maintain order. The lower and middle classes must be content to remain in their places," unquote. Quote, "The leader does not worry about keeping them happy. The leader keeps them entertained and riled. He provides lots of crises and spectacle. Politics is the art of identifying and neutralizing the enemy. The leader is the strongman who protects the people from their enemies. It is a simple formula," unquote. Quote, "A fascist leader knows how to tell a good story. He tells the people that he is a redeemer with a mystic connection to the nation and its destiny. He promises to restore the nation to its former greatness and vanquish its enemies. Benito Mussolini does it exactly right," unquote. Based on what Ivan Ilyin said, he believed fascism keeps a country in order by giving the leader lots of power and not letting the citizenry have much power. Fascism makes a country strong and stops its enemies, and fascism is the key to restoring a country back to its greatness. Fascists create their myths. A myth is faith and passion. It does not need to be a reality. Their myth is the nation, especially the greatness of their nation. And to this myth, this greatness which they want to translate into total reality, they control and subordinate all things. Their ideology is to reject the notion of individualism, where, quote, individuals must subordinate everything to the larger group to which they belong, unquote. Fascists want to place conditions on those who wish to become newspaper editors, outlaw false or tenuous news, and pass long overdue regulations. Any news reporting that impedes the diplomatic action of the government, creates unjustifiable alarm in the population, or injures national honor shall be penalized. Fascists believe the government must control the flow of information. Fascists must be willing to die for the glory of Mussolini and the immortal destiny of Italy. Here's a quote a fascist would say. Quote, Italy took the first step towards achieving greatness and restoring the glory of ancient Rome on October 30th, 1922. In a great revolution, the great Deuce, Benito Mussolini, and the black shirt troops marched into Rome in the name of the people of Italy. Patriotic Italians of all classes joined together in the march. All across Italy, men and women who were enraged by the corruption or at the corruption and decadence of the liberals joined the mighty march. They all rallied around their new leader, Great Deuce Mussolini, unquote. Fascists believe democracy is beautiful, in theory. In practice, it is a fallacy. It cannot work. The people want order, a strong, manly leader, and believe in their greatness and destiny. Here's a quote a fascist would say. Quote, the truth is that people are tired of liberty. They are tired of the chaos and order. They understand that compromise is for the weak. Despite cities like New York, where there is such mingling of the impure, the 20th century would be known in the history as a century of fascism, unquote. Now that you know the philosophical principles of fascism, let's go back to Mussolini to see what else he did with his fascist actions. On May 22nd, 1939, Mussolini formed a partnership with Germany by signing the Pact of Steel. Adolf Hitler, a fascist dictator, ruled Germany and was the leader of the nation's Nazi party. Mussolini entered World War II as Hitler's ally. He believed Italy would emerge from the war as a mighty empire. But World War II did not end as Mussolini envisioned, since his partnership with Hitler led Italy to defeat and ruin. This was a problem for Mussolini because fascism is about winning and promising victory. When it became clear Italy and Germany would lose the war, Mussolini tried to escape from Italy. He was shot dead by Italians who hung his body upside down. So when people who believe in fascism end up losing something, they feel betrayed and take violent actions against the leader who persuaded them to follow a fascist. Now, not all myths and lies are harmful. Most cultures embrace and love myths and stories. Many myths and stories overlap with innocent childhood fantasy and fun, such as the Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny, and Santa Claus. Others help define the culture in positive ways, such as the idea that a great leader cannot tell a lie. Myths, such as the Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny, and Santa Claus, illustrate what has been called willful belief. Children often pretend to believe long after they suspect the truth because they want to reap the rewards. However, lies and propaganda are harmful when they push a harmful agenda or when the goal is to subvert the rule of law and install a tyrant as the ruler of a country. When people take lies and propaganda seriously and believe they are facts, then telling myths does not become fun anymore, and it is the time for us to step in and stop those myths from perpetuating. In conclusion, fascism did not come out of nowhere. It emerged in moments of uncertainty when people were frustrated, afraid, or desperate for change. By understanding Max Weber's 3 forms of authority, we can see why fascism thrives in democratic systems where a charismatic leader can manipulate public emotion, weaponize disinformation, and slowly dismantle the very institutions meant to protect and serve citizens. Mussolini's rise in Italy shows how easily exaggerations, myths, and outright lies can be used to rewrite reality, create false enemies, and build a story of national redemption that hides a dangerous pursuit of power. Ivan Eiland's philosophy further reveals that Fascism depends on controlling disinformation, suppressing individuality, and convincing people that democracy is chaos while dictatorship makes a country strong and stable. These ideas are relics of the past. They remain relevant whenever leaders appeal to people's emotions over reason, myth over truth, and division over unity. Of course, not all myths are harmful. Some bring joy, comfort, or cultural value. But when myths and propaganda are taken as facts, they become dangerous. Fascism shows us what happens when a community stops questioning and verifying information and starts believing whatever a powerful figure declares as truth, no matter if the information is true or false. Disinformation thrives when we stop paying attention to what is going on around us and we lose our commitment to truth. But by understanding how fascism operates, we become better prepared to recognize its tactics, challenge its harmful narratives, and defend the institutions from getting ruined by fascists. In the next video, we will talk about the origins of Nazi Germany and the propaganda it spread across that country. Until then, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and turn on the post notifications so you will be notified when I post my next video. I appreciate your support. Remember, you are powerful, you are capable, and you are the changemaker our society needs. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you soon.